Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic video. It is about 10:30 here on a Sunday. A pretty overcasty day here. It's supposed to be rainy, I think. So today is going to be a good day to watch movies, and I'm actually going with a friend. Actually, today I'm actually very excited. I'm going to be going to my favorite beloved store of all time. I'm going to be going to Bull Moose in a few hours in Waterville, Maine. That's the shop I always talk about. That is my go-to place, my little home away from home, if you will, if you want to call it that. That's kind of what I call it. And also, I was told like my favorite food in the world is, and I never get a chance to eat it because it's hard to find around here. But my favorite food in the world is Indian food. So I was told by a friend recommended a place in Waterville that's an Indian restaurant. So we're gonna hit that up afterwards. So I'm really excited. My favorite cuisine of all time, and again, it's like you know, you never you can get pizza. There's a lot of great restaurants here in Mid Coast, but you can get pizza and Chinese food and all kinds of things for the most part, fried seafood or whatever. But finding Indian food here is pretty tough. So, I there was a time in my life where I was spoiled, and I ate Indian food constantly, and it was an amazing time. I had a friend years back who was from India, and she owned a few restaurants, or a restaurant in Portland, Maine, which was an Indian place. And she was an amazing chef and cook, and she would always make fresh Indian food from scratch when I would come over to visit her, and that was great. But we kind of lost touch over the years, and but I was spoiled. That was an amazing time, and then there was also a time where I actually spent quite a bit of time actually in India, and for a couple of months, and I felt like the food I was eating, I felt like I was living like a king. So it's the only food too that I could easily become a vegetarian on. I don't usually eat a lot of meat, or eat I do love meat, but I eat a lot less. And with it being principally vegetarian, the diet for Indian food, I never missed it at all. So, but anyway, so today I'm really excited. We're gonna be going to Bull Moose. I'm gonna get a new batch of movies. I've been going more frequently. I try to go. It's probably been about a month and a half or so. I try to go, every couple of months, but lately I've been going more just because I love it so much, and I've been just trying to snag up as many of these exploitation movies as I can, because I had mentioned in a video yesterday that I have this feeling that because of the digital thing right now and where we're at, it could go away. It's a I think the fans will be there, myself included, to support these movies, but we're kind of in the minority, and I don't know how they can compete, but we'll see. I think it's still going strong for at least the time being. So we'll see. There's been recent news also of the Colonial Theatre, which is a theater here in Belfast, which is I've had so many great experiences going there over the years. I've seen so many great movies, but again, it closed last year. It closed in October of last year, 2022, and it was due to lots of reasons, because people not going out to the theater and blah blah blah, all these things. But it also was, I think, more complicated than that. I think it was, when they closed, like most places had to, or did during the lockdown and COVID and all these things. They got hit pretty hard. Everyone in the entertainment business got hit really, really hard. So probably hit the hardest. People in the service industry. So when they reopened, there was still a reluctancy I think for people at that time to come out and to go out into gatherings, because COVID was still very much a thing. So, and it ushered in this whole thing that was happening anyway with the whole downloading, or I should say, the whole streaming thing. It kind of just pushed. That was always a thing happening, or that has been a thing happening before COVID, and that was already affecting the box office and films and all of those things, and tied to the industry. But it was still, films are still for the most part making money. But when that when COVID hit, it forced that door down completely. So that became, at one point, the only way people could actually see a movie was through streaming. So it really set this weird precedent, and and whatnot. So it's, but what now? What I was announced a few days ago that they're going to be reopening, but it's not going to be really resembling what it once was. I don't think. The tail end of when Colonial was open, they changed the theater into this kind of art center. They were having different events aside from showing movies. One of the things they did that I felt was a really, well, to be honest, I felt was a bad decision, was they weren't showing any first run movies. Uh, Batman had come out with Robert Patterson. There was a bunch of other big movies that had come out, and they didn't have those films. Which, if you're running a movie theater, especially if it's a commercial movie theater, uh, it goes without saying that that's going to be, you know, a lose lose situation. So, and then when they reopened, they started showing lots of older films, and then they were doing comedy nights. They were having music. They were doing all these variety things. They had speakers come in, people who had written various books on different topics. So they mixed it up and all these different things. And they were still showing movies, but they were showing older films. They were doing free showings. And, it was cool what they were doing. And I thought, is it because it's a beautiful space? But over time, my work schedule was very different then. But over time, to me, at least in my perspective, this theater really wasn't a movie theater anymore. And I remember people talking about, chiming in and commenting, and even having discussions with people, how they were like, well, this Colonial Theater, movie theater, isn't really a movie theater anymore, and it's something different, and it's not a destination anymore to see movies. So a lot of people were going to flagship cinema or traveling further away. The folks that did want to see movies. So a lot of folks stopped going too. They were getting a different audience, which was helping them, but it wasn't really a movie theater anymore. And so they're supposedly going to be reopening, but it's going to be run by, I think, some kind of collective of different people, like a cooperatively run kind of business. And they're going to still try to maintain doing what they're doing by showing certain films, but probably not first run films. They're going to have music events, art events, and just do various things in the art category, which is cool. But I don't know. It's weird, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating on a lot of fronts for me, because I understand they got to do what they got to do. They weren't able to survive in their predicament. But flagship cinema, for instance, almost closed in Thomaston because of people not showing up to the theater. But now they're doing pretty well, and they're surviving. And they dumped a bunch of money in, and they're doing pretty well now. But so folks are actually going to the theater. I've noticed, since I've been going there, and I've been going there a lot more often, that there's a lot more people going there. So I don't know. It's a very tough time that way. And I remember even I had done a review of a movie that I saw. I think it was uh, Evil Dead, Evil Dead Rise. That was my last review that I did for the channel of a movie I had seen in the theater. And I had said, this is a movie. I think that movie is definitely a movie to see in the theater because the way it's mixed, the audio and the visual sense of that film, it's very much an immersive experience. And I had said, oh, please, if you see this film, go, basically get up off your couch and go to a theater, And somebody had commented saying, well, blah 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 blah, I don't have the money to do this, and blah blah blah, I don't have the money to do that, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff, and I don't have. I mean, basically just poo-pooed the idea of going to a theater, and I was just like, okay, whatever. People can have their opinions, but I'm also like, you know, no matter what we do in this time, economically, there's a kind of a noose around everybody's neck. With the global market being out of control, um, the food prices, the lack of people, businesses finding staff fully operate, where it's fully functional, shipping costs, all those things, farming, just everything. So all the prices have been going up. So everything is astronomically high. And if you look at what it costs to stream, it's about the same, and it's increased. It's at a higher cost, like everything else. So I think people, like myself, I still do what I normally do for the most part, but I also have to make decisions based on the economic situation where there's times where I eat out less, or there's certain things I, instead of getting that two or three beers, I'll just get the one, or sometimes I won't get a beer, because of the financial thing, especially if there's a cover charge or blah blah blah. But try to make the adjustments, to a degree as to where, because of where we're at right now. But generally, I think everything is expensive, and so I think that that's just a way of bitching and moaning and complaining about something because that person can do it, and I just think it's stupid. I think it's in my again, people can have their own opinions, and that's fine, but I just feel like it's this idea of like there's a lot of folks out there that are, if they see a photo out there, like say on Instagram or somewhere on the web, and somebody has taken, a photo, or there's some photo of like a place in Italy or some art museum in Paris, or there's like this thing of now where people are satisfied with like seeing that photo, and that is providing that escapism, as opposed to like maybe going to the place and actually seeing the thing, that piece of art in person, and it can live like in this voyeuristic kind of way through that, and that can satisfy that rather than actually go to that place. And it sells the experience short. You're not really getting that experience, and I think that's part of it too. But anyway, so today's show, I'm really excited. This is about a movie called Massacre at Central High. This movie is super cool, super fun. It is a quintessential exploitation movie. This was released by Synapse. Synapse is also one of the biggest companies around that specializes in exploitation movies. Synapse actually is probably, they might be the oldest company around. They kind of started this, they were ahead of their time. They started, I think, about 10 or 12 years ago, maybe. First on the DVD format was the first format that they specialized in, but they were releasing a lot of cult movies, underground movies, exploitation movies. And they were, again, I think they were ahead of the curve because they were able to digitally remaster a lot of these movies before anyone else was doing so. And since then, there's been, a ton of other companies that have come out. My favorite being Mondo Macabra, Blue Underground, Severin, so many great labels. But Synapse is great. I don't own a ton of Synapse. I have a ton Mondo Macabre is probably the biggest label for me. I have probably yeah, I definitely have more of their movies than probably any other company out there. And then also Blue Underground, I have a lot of their films, and I definitely have a lot of Severin. And I know I have other Synapse movies, but not a whole lot for some reason. But I notice more in a lot of my travels to when I go shopping for movies. For some odd reason, I really notice that there's always tons of Mondo Macabre titles out there. And they're pretty obscure. I think they're a little bit less known than, say, Synapse or Severin. I know they have a little bit, they're a smaller company, but they are, as far as in the world of exploitation and their distributing, I think being that they're such a small company, it's literally two guys running the company. They are just killing it. Like I'm amazed by how much I see their movies everywhere, and I'm always blown away by that. But I got this last year. I think yeah, it was last year, and this came out in 1976. It's considered a horror thriller exploitation movie, but it's so awesome. Um, it's it's such a freaking fun movie. And again, to say or to see that this came out in '76 is just hilarious, and I love it. The basic plot of the story is David, a new student at Central High, meets Mark, an old friend who he once helped out of a jam at their previous school. Mark tells David that the school can be like a country club for him if he befriends Bruce and Paul, the bullies who rule the school student body. Mark has become their somewhat reluctant accomplice. Over the next few days, David witnesses Craig and Paul torment the other students, including the scrawny, spoony, and overweight Oscar, the school's hearing impaired librarian, and Rodney, who drives a rundown car and is vandalized by the bullies. After David forcibly thwarts the trio's attempt to rape two of the female students, Mary and Jane, in an empty classroom, and the bullies approach, Mark and him tell him he has one more chance to talk David into minding his own business. When he fails, the three bullies decide to take matters into their own hands. And yeah, this movie is centered around kind of like being a teenager, but it's also a slasher movie. A lot of people get picked off in this movie. It's super hilarious. The music is incredible. This package is really good. Like there is, it's a beautiful package that Severin put out. It's got the original artwork in it. Tons of special features on here. A super fun movie. It's definitely a bonkers kind of slasher movie. Um, I definitely think it totally lends itself to that in every way. It's a super fun ride. Um, and this was a movie I had never seen before. I had heard about it for actually a few years before I bought it, and I came across it Apple Moose, and it was directed by Rene Daalder. And Rene Daalder was a Dutch writer and director who lived in L.A. He worked with Jean B. Bont, Franz Bornet, and Rem Koolhaas. He was regarded as a pioneer in virtual reality and digital motion picture technologies, which is just wild. Movies that he was responsible for was, well, of course, Massacre at Central High at '76, Habitat in 1987, The White Slave in '69, Here Is Always Somewhere in 2007. Huh, I didn't realize. Hysteria, 1997. Population 1, 1986. But yeah, totally wild. And yeah, he was a pretty prolific director uh, of Dutch descent. He was a writer and a director also. But this package is killer. There's like at least 2 or 3 hours of special features on here. I've actually only seen this movie once, And again, this was a movie that kept coming up on various. There's a couple of guys that I watch on online, and where they specialize a lot on the exploitation world. And this was a movie that a lot of people had suggested, and I never seen. And then I was in the store one day and I bought it, and it's super awesome. It's super fun, super campy, super sleazy. It's very kind of plays out like a black comedy. It has elements of the slasher genre, which is my favorite genre. It's essentially like this revenge tale where these kids, basically take revenge on these bullies in high school. And it's got all these kind of weird, interesting little subplots, with the different groups that are in the school. But really great, and I think it also is pretty realistic in a lot of ways with what it's like to be, a teenager in high school, and you don't know shit from Shimola, and you're just trying to figure stuff out. So it's great, and it's a fun ride. It's a beautifully. This movie is beautifully shot. The transfer is really great on Blu-ray. Yeah, super fun. I'm looking forward to watching this again. And again, this was a movie I heard a lot about, and it was hyped up a lot as being a really great movie, a really great exploitation movie, and it doesn't disappoint at all. It's super fun. I highly recommend it. I think that if you're a fan of kind of the schlocky exploitation world, as well as the slasher genre, this is definitely an essential movie to check out. It's very, very cool. I remember this movie being a little bit longer. A lot of the exploitation movies that I own are really short. They're like an hour and 20 minutes. This one I think is like an hour and 40 minutes or so. So, super low budget, super campy, super ridiculous, super sleazy, super funny, pretty violent. It's got the whole classic slasher, all the classic slasher elements that you want from a slasher movie. Very good, very very cool movie, and looking forward to watching this again. And Seven really knocked it, or I should say, sorry, Synapse knocked it out of the park with this great addition. So, thanks again. And if you like this channel, please continue to subscribe and keep the comments coming. And I love interacting with other fellow film fanatics. It's always a blast, and the exchange of other ideas. A lot of my interactions with people who have been commenting on these videos, it becomes a thing of where we kind of make recommendations for each other, and that's super fun. And so, thanks again. This is Jason Dean here at Film Fanatic. So, we will see you next time. Peace. Have a great day.